it's Taylor. I'm here to take you through a tutorial on creating a baked artichoke dip. So throughout today I will be taking you step by step on how to prepare the ingredients, put everything together, and bake your artichoke dip. This recipe is very flexible. You can add or remove ingredients, do alternative swaps for what you have in your home or what you normally find at your grocery store. So I myself have some swaps that I've already got laid out here. So I'll be turning the camera over to my cooking station, and that way you can see how I prepare everything. Okay, so normally when I'm about to make something, I like to have all my ingredients out, ready to be used. That way I don't, for one, forget anything, and I make sure that I have all the ingredients that I'm going to be needing to create my recipe. I'll go through what the recipe calls for. So first is garlic. I'm using a whole clove of garlic. This is actually like 3 cloves. I like to use garlic in my cooking, so I use a little bit more. And if you don't have a fresh garlic on hand, or you don't see yourself using it too often, you can always buy a minced garlic that comes in a jar like this. This is super simple because it comes already minced for you, so you just can add it in. If you're not feeling too adventurous, you can always go with a garlic powder just to add that garlicky flavor. Next on the list is artichoke hearts. So I have 2 cans of whole artichoke hearts here. These are a lot easier than buying the fresh artichokes where you have to peel them yourself, and you get a lot more artichokes in 1 can rather than if you were to buy a fresh artichoke. If you find frozen artichokes, that's completely fine too to use. Next I have scallions. So these are just little onions. They're not too oniony in flavor, but they add a really nice texture as well as just that little bit of extra onion flavor into the dish. Next I have 1/4 of a cup of non-fat plain Greek yogurt. I don't normally purchase plain Greek yogurt, so at the store I just bought one of those little self-serve containers, individualized containers, and I just used my 1/4 cup measuring cup to measure this out. And then I also have a 1/4 of a cup of light mayonnaise. Again, just a 1/4 of a cup measured out already. This recipe specifically called for fontina cheese to be used, but I couldn't find that at my local grocery store, so I just went with another cheese that melts well. So there are a couple cheeses that you would want to use, like a Gouda, Asiago, mozzarella, Gruyere, fontina. This is a Monterey Jack that I'm using, and you can buy the cheese either pre-shredded, you can buy it in a block like I did, whatever you can get your hands on. And today I'm just going to be using a piece of my, an attachment from my mandolin that has grates on it. That way I can just finely grate it to use. But if you want to buy already shredded pre-packaged cheese, that's fine. I think the shredded cheese doesn't always melt as well because it does have an anti-caking agent on it, so sometimes that can mess with your recipe. But if that's all you can find, or you don't have something to grate with at home, that shredded cheese will still work fine. I've definitely used it for melting and it works okay. And then last, I just have a teaspoon here of lemon juice that I've already squeezed. So the first thing we are going to do is just get our oven ready, hot and ready to go. So you'll preheat your oven to 425 degrees Fahrenheit, and you'll just let that heat up while you're cooking. So, you'll let that heat up while you're preparing the ingredients, and then by the time the oven heats up, you'll be ready to just throw it in the oven. So I'm going to start with my garlic clove. Like I said, you can always use an alternative garlic, but I just think that the fresh garlic is just tastes a little bit better. So to chop garlic, usually I like to make sure my garlic is on the board here. You'll just take your knife like this and give it a good smack. This just breaks the shell so that it's easier to peel. And we'll just peel the garlic out of its little shell here, because this is the part we're going to be using. Okay. And then I just like to start with one end and just run my knife through it, just to give it a nice mint, so it's minced so that it's in little tiny pieces. And that way you don't get too big of chunks in each bite. And I'll just run my knife through it one more time just to break up any little pieces. Garlic is minced. And then next we are going to open our artichoke hearts. I do like to rinse them off in the sink with a strainer. That way it just gets off that extra salt that is in there from the canning process. Just a little bit less sodium. We can always add back salt if we need to later on. Alright, so I have my artichokes rinsed here just in a strainer. This is what they look like outside of the can. They're just the little hearts of the artichoke. And we're just going to chop these up and we'll throw them in the bowl here, which our garlic is going to be in just a minute. So cooking really can be used to relieve stress. It can be just a good way to take your mind off of what's been going on in the day and focus on something else, maybe other than our studies, our work, whatever else is going on in our lives. So I cook most days. I find it really relaxing at the end of the day just to build my own meal based off a recipe or just something that I've made up on my own. The great part about cooking is that there is no necessarily right or wrong way to do things. So you can create a meal from scratch, you can follow a recipe, you can alter a recipe, which is kind of what I'm doing here. And the great thing is that you are the one who gets to decide how much of something you're putting in a dish, what you're adding. You can totally customize it to your taste buds. If you're following a special kind of diet or if you need some modifications, you can easily do that. You don't have to worry about how much sodium's in your meal. You know exactly how much you're putting in. So eating is the way that we nourish our bodies so that they are able to do all the things that they do for us every day. So it's always important to make sure that you're fueling your body appropriately, whether that means getting enough calories in each day, eating fruits and vegetables each day to get those different nutrients in, making sure you're not skipping out on carbs or proteins or fat. All of those play an important role in our bodies, so it's just important to make sure that you're getting something in your body every day and really trying to make sure that you're setting yourself up for a successful day. Alright, so I have all of my artichokes chopped up and I'm just going to put them all in the bowl here, and that way we just have some room to chop up our scallion next. Get rid of some of this extra water. So we're going to chop up our green onions next. You want to use both the green and the white part. I usually just cut all the ends off just because we don't need the ends here. And then we'll chop it similarly to the garlic. Just want little small rings here. And then we'll just go ahead and mix this in with our artichokes and garlic. If you don't feel totally comfortable using a knife like this, you can also just use like kitchen scissors or shears to cut up the green onions. Sometimes that's a little bit easier, especially if you're not as familiar or comfortable with using a knife like this to run it through. So definitely always ways to work around either things that you're not familiar with or maybe you don't have. Alright, so we've got that in, and then next we are going to shred our cheese so that we can mix it in. So if you just are using shredded cheese, you can just measure out a couple ounces of cheese. It's about 6 tablespoons is what we'll be using, about 1.5 ounces of cheese. And you can use a scale, you can use a measuring cup. Really whatever you have. Everything is pretty convertible, so if a recipe calls for like a certain amount of grams of something, you can always find the conversion online if you're not sure what that converts to in, say, tablespoons or teaspoons. So incorporating self-care into our daily routines is pretty important, even if it seems like we don't have enough time during the day to ensure that we are giving our bodies the love and support that they need. But there's definitely some ways that you can kind of set yourself up for successfully nourishing your body and hopefully at the same time relieving some stress and caring for your body. So if you already have a really busy schedule, you're not really sure how you would take the time out of the day to prepare a meal or even like a snack like this, meal prepping is always a great option. And by meal prepping, I don't always mean that you're creating a whole meal, or you don't need to create breakfast, lunch, and dinner for 5 days and it's all the same meals. Even simply just cutting up fruits and vegetables so that you can grab them and go if you're on your way to class or your computer if you're zooming in. Cheese, yogurt, nuts, you can definitely portion those out ahead of time. That way you can just grab a little container or a Ziploc bag of them. That way you don't have to necessarily spend the time to wash everything, cut everything, put it in a bowl. Cooking is also great because you don't need too much focus and concentration, especially if you're following a recipe. So you definitely can be multitasking while you're cooking. So you could listen to a lecture, you could listen to a podcast, have a family or friend quiz you with flashcards while you're cooking, and even using just like timers to keep yourself on track. Make sure you're not spending too much time if you have a lot of other responsibilities to get to. But there's always a lot of things that you can do while you're cooking. Alright, so I have my cheese all shredded up here, so we're just going to go ahead and add the cheese in with the rest of our ingredients in this bowl, and we'll throw in the Greek yogurt as well as the mayonnaise. So we'll just throw this in here. And personally, when I cook, I almost always use one of these rubber spatulas. These are awesome because you can use them to scrape the sides of bowls, just to help you get all the ingredients out, and it's a little bit cleaner. But we'll just go ahead and toss this in here. with our Greek yogurt, and now our mayonnaise. And we'll just go ahead and give this a stir. And the other great thing about cooking is you don't necessarily always need all the ingredients that a recipe calls for. You don't need all the tools and equipment. Sometimes they have, I know like on Pinterest, they'll link all these fancy equipment that they purchase to use, but whatever you have, you know, as long as it's a vesicle that holds food or mixes food, it's definitely going to work. Some extra add-ins that you could do for this, you could add in some spinach, and that could be canned, frozen, or fresh spinach. That would be great to make it like a spinach and artichoke dip. You could do like a variety of cheeses if you wanted. You could even add like tomatoes, anything that you like in your dips, you could definitely add in. Alright, we have everything mixed together. I'll just drop in my teaspoon of lemon juice. And then we're going to put this in an oven-safe pan. So what I'm using is actually a cast iron skillet, just because it's a pretty decent size. It'll hold the dip well, and I can put it in the oven. You could use a ramekin if you have that, or even if you have like an oven-safe pan that you normally use to cook on top of the stove with. You could also use that to throw in the oven. Any Tupperware that's glass that is oven-safe would also be perfectly fine to use. So again, whatever you have, use it. So we'll just go ahead and get this into our pan here. Don't need to grease it or anything. You can just drop it right in. Perfect. And we'll just spread it around so it's one nice even layer. And then we'll go ahead and sprinkle some more cheese on top. You could use the same cheese that you've been using, or like a cheddar cheese usually goes well on top of baked dishes, so you could always sprinkle a little bit of cheese on top. Or if you don't want to add an extra cheese, that's totally fine. You can just go ahead and put it in the oven like this. Bake for about 30 minutes. You just want to bake it until the top is like golden and bubbly. You should see on the sides here little bubbles coming up, and that means it's usually cooked all the way through. So while that is cooking, I just wanted to go over some alternative ingredient swaps that you could use for this recipe. Again, you can make it however you want based on your taste buds. If you wanted to make it vegan, you could use a vegan mayonnaise and a vegan soy-based cheese instead. And then even you could use like a nut-based yogurt or a plant-based yogurt instead of the Greek yogurt from cow's milk, if you wanted to do that. If you don't want to purchase light mayonnaise because you just normally keep regular mayonnaise at home, you can just use regular mayonnaise as well. And as far as lemon juice goes, you can always buy those little juice concentrates where it's already squeezed lemon juice for you. If you don't have a lemon, you could always use a lime. You just want that little bit of acid. And then for serving, I'm going to serve my dip with little store-bought pita chips. You could definitely use tortilla chips, crackers. You can even use like cut up celery or cut up carrots to dip. You could also use like pretzels, whatever you have laying around the house would be fine to use too.